In a race, I'm in a fight here, and it's a fight that I think really matters for the future of our country. My party is 23 seats short. Try saying that after a drink, 23 seats short. But anyway, we are, not that I've had a drink, by the way, I just want to point that out. You know, we're 23 seats short of a majority, and I'm going to do everything in the next 21 days to try and win that. I don't want another coalition. I don't think the country needs another coalition. I think the coalition worked and worked well. The country was in a difficult situation. Parties coming together to govern effectively worked. But I think now, actually, there's a desire out there for a government that can be decisive, that can be strong, and frankly, more accountable. Because the problem in coalition is you go into that room with your manifesto and their manifesto, and there's a bit of a trade-off. And it's not a trade-off that you're all involved in. It's a trade-off, inevitably, behind closed doors, in a, well, not a dark room, that would be a bit odd, but, you know, and people don't get what they want. So I want a strong, decisive government. I'm 23 seats short of it, and I don't want to speculate now about what I do if I fall short. If I fall short, you can ask me, I promise, the next day, and I'll tell you what I'll do. You know, with me, I will put the national interest first. I formed a coalition because I thought it was the right thing to do, but I'm not going to spend 21 days speculating about it. I'm going to spend 21 days trying to win the overall majority that I think the country would benefit from.
Good luck.
Thank you. Any from up there? Gentleman up here.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the right to buy and you extended
Yeah.
social housing. Obviously, a lot of people that fall into that housing association bracket were predominantly the Labour voters. Now, obviously, they're swayed now from going to yourselves. Is it just a way of buying people's votes from Labour?
Okay. It's a very good question, so I repeat it. Is the right to buy just a way of buying people's votes, or is it a genuine housing policy? It is a genuine housing policy, and I tell you, it comes straight from values. I will never forget the day I bought my first flat. I had the keys, I walked in. That moment of excitement, of feeling, I've worked for this, I own this, it's mine. It's a really great feeling. We should be encouraging home ownership. Now, when we put in the right to buy for council house tenants, a lot of people were able to have that feeling. They'd lived in the home, they'd worked hard, they'd put savings aside, they got a discount to help them, but they were able to buy their own home. Now, what I'm saying is, why should we treat residents of housing associations differently? We should give them the discount and allow them to become homeowners, as I suspect many people in this room have become. But crucially, and this goes to your point, sir, we have got to build houses for the next generation who want to buy or who want to rent. And here's where I think this policy can really help. Because one of the ways we're paying for this is we're saying to local councils, you should sell off the most expensive properties that you've got. There are places in our country, particularly in some of the big cities, particularly London, where there are council houses that are actually worth £1 million. Now, if you sold off that £1 million council house, once it's become empty, no one gets pushed out of the house, but once it becomes empty, you could build, you know, 7, 8, 9 new houses or flats to house people that need those houses. So we get houses on the way into this policy. We also get houses on the way out of this policy, because when you sell someone the housing association home, the housing association can use the receipt to build another house, and we will have one-for-one replacement in the local council area. So I think this can be a win-win, a win for the tenant that becomes a homeowner and therefore an owner in our country, and secondly, more homes built for the people we need to house. So I think it can be a success, which is why I'm so enthusiastic about it. Madam here.
Would you classify your term as a success for ordinary people when 1 in 5 people are living in poverty, and there's been a 163% increase in adults and children having to use food banks for 3 days or more?
Okay. Would I say this government has been a success for ordinary people, and the lady quoted some figures about poverty and food bank usage? I would say this government has been a success for ordinary working people, not least because there are 2 million more people in work. And I think that's the most important route out of poverty. The most important thing a government can do is create the conditions where people get work. And actually, when you look at the statistics, and I'm not, you know, the statistics are clear, under this government, inequality has gone down, not up. There are fewer children in poverty than when I became Prime Minister, and crucially, pensioner poverty, because we have lifted the pension above inflation. Pensioner poverty, and I think we should really be looking after elderly people in our country, pensioner poverty has gone down by a very big margin. Do we need to do more and create more jobs? Yes. Do we need to go on trying to help people who are stuck on welfare and get them off welfare and into work? Yes. Do we need to make sure we provide the training and the skills for people who can't get those jobs? Absolutely. And as I put it on the steps of Downing Street the night I became Prime Minister, In our country, those who can should, those who can't, we always help. We should always have a safety net there for people who can't help themselves, and that's what disability benefits and other benefits are there for, and we should always maintain them. Gentleman here.
You say that poverty level has gone down. Is it right that an adult in the 60s, disabled person, registered disabled, can only claim £84 per month when there's a country where people living earning up to millions
Yeah.
per year?
Well, what we've done with disability benefits, is actually we're replacing progressively the disability living allowance with the personal independence payment. And under that payment, the most disabled people, more of them, get the higher rate of benefits. They'll actually be getting more money. And of course, disability living allowance is not means tested. It's there often as an additional benefit to people over and above either the pension they're getting or the income support they're getting or the other benefits they're getting. So of course, there's always more we can do, particularly to help disabled people to be more integrated into society. And over the last year, 140,000 disabled people have gone into work. But I think our benefit system can work well when we make it work well. Okay, let's take lady back here. Should we try and get the microphone to you? Here it comes.
Hi, for someone who rents privately,
Yeah.
what work are you doing to regulate that? Because the
Yeah.
costs can be from £50 upwards.
Yes. I think this is a really important question because lots of people are renting privately and that market has increased, which is a good thing. You know, there was a time when the private rented sector got very, very small and there was less choice for people. But I think there are a couple of things that are wrong. First of all, there's been too much only of the one sort of tenancy, of the short tenancy, and we are working with the private sector landlords to try and encourage longer 2, 3, 4-year tenancies so people get more security. I think that would help. I think the other thing, which we have made some progress on, is transparency on charges. So I think there is a sense, and you might want to come back on this, that sometimes tenants feel that they don't get transparency over the charges that they get hit with, and also they find that for whatever reason, the landlord never gives back the deposit you put down, even if the house is left in perfect condition. So I think transparency and rights for the tenants, as well as potentially longer tenancies, are the areas we should look at. But we should do this in a way that does try to encourage a private rented sector. In the past, sometimes, over-regulation has just stopped this sector has been stopped in its tracks, and then you're left either with a choice of only council housing or people having to buy, not always being able to afford it. So this market does matter that we get it right. Please.
Sorry, I was looking more at around the regulations of the fees that you're
Yes.
charged in private renting.
Well, I think that's where the greater transparency could make a difference, to make sure that there's no hidden fees, so people know absolutely what they're paying. Okay, let's have a lady up here.
What are your views on inheritance tax, David?
What-
Please,
What are my views on inheritance tax? Well, we made a big announcement about this at the weekend. My view on inheritance tax is very simple. There should be inheritance tax in our country, and it should be paid by the wealthiest. And that generally in the past has been the case, that only around 2 or 3% of people have been paying inheritance tax. The problem is that as property prices have lifted up, we found a lot of people who do not consider themselves the wealthiest people in our country drawn into inheritance tax, because the current threshold for inheritance tax is £325,000. And there are people, including people in and around Leeds and Yorkshire and the Humber region, you know, who've worked hard. They bought a house. They may be built onto the house. They put some savings into the house. They're really proud of what they've done. The house there becomes worth more than £325,000, and they are at risk of paying inheritance tax. Now, of course, the system we have, you can transfer between husband and wife. So the 325 should become 650, and that then takes even more people out of inheritance tax. But what we've come up with is a very simple idea to say everyone should get, on top of the £325,000, a housing allowance for inheritance tax of £175,000, and that basically means that we're taking the family home out of inheritance tax. Inheritance tax will still be there for the millionaires and the above, but anyone with a home of under £1 million should be secure knowing I've worked for this house, I've paid for this house, I've saved into this house, I can pass it on to my children without the taxman getting their hands on it. And I'll tell you why I think that's fair. Because if you think about it, you've paid tax on the income when you've earned it. You pay tax on the house when you buy it because of the stamp duty. I don't think you should have to pay tax all over again when you pass it on to your children. So that's what we're going to do. We're not abolishing inheritance tax, but we're saying for the family home, let's take it out of inheritance tax and let's leave inheritance tax for the wealthiest. Sir?
What will the Conservative government do about moving wealth and jobs to the Yorkshire region?
Crucial question. Look, the last government, and you could argue governments before that, hitched too much of the fortunes of this country to the City of London and just hoped that would go on growing. And I think that's been a disastrous strategy for our country, and it came to a juddering halt in 2008 with the financial crash. So this government was determined to do things differently. What can we physically do to make a difference, to rebalance the country? Well, I'll give you some of the things that we have done and will go on doing. One is skills. There's no doubt that training, skills, apprenticeships, that makes a big difference. And while we've had to make cuts in some places, we've actually expanded the skills and traineeships that we've been funding. Second thing, probably the most important, is transport. I mean, that's why I'm so passionate about HS2, not just phase 1, London to Birmingham, but phase 2, Birmingham to Leeds, Birmingham to Manchester, because all the evidence shows that these big infrastructure projects, they can transform the economic geography of our country and really help to drive growth in the different regions. And it's not just about journey speeds. I think sometimes people overemphasize that. It's also about capacity. It's about the capacity of our rail system and shrinking our country effectively to really help both sides of the Pennines, Manchester and Leeds. So I think that will make a huge difference. The road network needs modernisation as well. The existing rail network, where we're electrifying the Trans-Pennine line. And I think the Chancellor's vision, he's spoken about the Northern Powerhouse concept, I think is a really strong one. And the basis for it is this, look, London is a global city. It is a massive success story, and the country benefits from having London as a capital city and as a home of a huge amount of enterprise and wealth creation. The cities of the north, individually, are obviously much smaller than London, but if you link up, you know, Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, Hull, the great cities of the north, which we could do with better rail links and potentially HS3, if you do that, that would be a real counterpoint to the strength of London. And if you take, for instance, the amazing university hospitals, universities, and science parks that we have in the north of England, imagine combining those strengths together to build science-based industries here in the north of England. So I think that that vision is the most important. So I'd say skills matters, transport matters, but also, frankly, government money. And, you know, I was looking at these figures this morning. The Leeds City deal is worth £627 million. That is twice as much as the deal for London, even though London is 6 times the size. So we have consciously tried to shift resources into the north of our country to make sure regions benefit. And there is some good evidence that it's working. And if you look at this region, there are 129,000 more people in work here in Yorkshire and the Humberside region than there were when I became Prime Minister. Some of the fastest jobs growth has actually been in the northwest, not in the southeast. The fastest growth in exports has been in the northeast, not in the south. So it's work in progress, there's more to be done, but rebalancing our economy is absolutely crucial to our national success. Sorry, long answer, but important question. Lady right up here.
Hi, Mr. Cameron. So first of all, I'd like to open by saying that I actually voted Conservative at the last election, and I'm not really someone that buys into the kind of nasty party rhetoric that comes out of the Labour Party, but over the last Parliament, I've been pushed towards Labour, and I think I will be voting Labour at the next election. One of the key things that swung me was the legal aid cuts that your government have brought in, which mean that now access to justice is basically a preserve of the rich. And